Welcome back to another episode of the MaxTalks Podcast. I'm here with James and George, but we are joined with today Danny Higginbotham. How are you, Danny?
I'm very well, thank you. Very well, not too bad
Good.
at all. I'm a little bit disappointed with the Liverpool shirt.
Hey!
I knew it. I only did it because it was you.
I thought so. Yeah, it's not going down great, but hey, you got your moment, fully deserved. So do you support Liverpool?
I do, yeah.
Oh, that's all right then.
Yeah,
that's all right.
You can tell by the southern accent.
I know. Yeah, they all come out the woodwork, don't they, when they get success? Always.
So Danny has played for the likes of Derby, Manchester United, Southampton, Stoke. List goes on. And the strangest one, I know, James, you wanted to talk about this. I don't know if you want to talk about it now or you want to talk about it later on. About Danny playing for Gibraltar.
Gibraltar, yeah. How did that come about?
Well, when I was like earlier on in my career, I got asked a few times, whether I would get involved. But at that time, they weren't associated with UEFA, so I wouldn't make any point because it would just cost-wise for them. It wasn't worth it. And then they got accepted by UEFA, and they asked me then, would I come and get involved? And it was at a stage in my career because I was playing non-league football then, last few months of my career, that I think if I'd have said no, I probably would have regretted it. So it was an opportunity that I took, and it was a great experience for me. The first game recognised by UEFA, we played in Portugal against Slovakia, and everybody was like, it's going to be 8-0, 9-0, whatever it was. And I remember about 2 hours before the game, we had like a walk in the little city centre nearby, and all the lads went into the sports shop and come out with like football boots, like proper football boots. And I was like, what's going on here? They forgot the boots. I was like, this is a little bit worrying. They've never worn football boots before. And like the manager said to me, he said, loads of lads, they've never played on grass before. They've never played on a grass pitch. It's always been AstroTurf. So they had to go and get, proper boots for the occasion. And we ended up drawing 0-0. And I think it was afterwards really when I realised what the occasion meant to everybody, because the president of Gibraltar came in, the chairman of Gibraltar, the Football Association, all your top people from Gibraltar came in, and there was a lot of emotion, because they'd fought so hard to be recognised by UEFA, and they'd finally got that recognition, and they were then able to carry on doing what they're doing. And obviously, it's a real slow burner for them. I think they're aiming to just improve year on year, and they've got a lot of players that want to learn. Technically, they're very gifted, but they're one of the smallest nations around, so it's very difficult for them to be physical. As in terms of the games, but it's progress for them and the way that they've been doing things. So long may it continue. But yeah, it was a great experience for me, and something that I really would have regretted if I didn't accept and didn't say yes to doing it.
So was that? So I looked on online. Was that through your grandmother?
Yeah. So my grandma's Gibraltarian, my mum's Spanish, and my uncle was actually the manager. And he was the one that asked me. He'd asked me on numerous occasions. And so I said, yeah, I'd go and do it. And then I played, I think, 3 games for them. And they wanted me to be involved with the Euros, the qualifiers. And in order for me to do that, I would have had to carry on playing domestically. And I'd had enough. I'd had enough of football. And it wouldn't have been fair to the domestic team, whoever I was playing for, to be playing week in, week out just so I could play international football. And it certainly wouldn't have been fair on Gibraltar either. So, for everybody concerned, I think that it was best that I just, I said no. I said, if you need any help, any advice along the way, then give me a call. But it wouldn't have been fair to anybody, because I just didn't want to play football anymore. I'd had enough, which I was happy about because I was able to finish on my own terms.
It's quite an experience, though, isn't it? Like being able to play for Gibraltar and sort of play against teams as big as that, with the likes of obviously Marek Hamsik and players that have achieved a lot in their career. So yeah, hats off to you.
Yeah, it was a great experience for me. I've been fortunate enough to spend the majority of my career in the Premier League, and then to finish it off, by playing, international football was great. And I think my last game for Gibraltar, because I'd retired probably 2 or 3 months before, but it was something that I promised them, that I played the 3 games. And I think my 3rd game for them, which was my last ever game, I think it was something like my 450th game. So it was a nice way to round it off.
Yeah.
And I look back on it, it was great. It was a great experience, but it definitely would have been wrong for me to carry on, because it would have been unfair to a number of people. For me to just be continuing playing football just so I could play international football, it wouldn't have been right.
Mm-hmm. Now, you started off at Manchester United. Was that your boyhood club? Did you grow up supporting?
It was. I remember I was the age of 9. I was at Manchester City.
Oh,
Yeah, I know. I was there for probably about 5 or 6 months, and I was training at Platt Lane, which was the old training ground across the road from Main Road. Yeah. And I remember one day I was playing for an interleague team. I think probably maybe under 10s, under 11s, something like that. And what they do, they get like all the league teams. They just pick the best players out of the league team, and you'll play against another league. And at the end of the game, Brian Kidd, who funnily enough is now, one of the assistants at Manchester City, he pulled my mum and dad into the office and said, what colour's your house? And my dad's like, well, it's red. It's always been red. I was like, well, what are you doing with that load of crap then across the road? So ironically, but obviously, he scored in the European Cup final for United, played for Manchester City, and what a wonderful human being he is as well. One of the nicest, most humble people I've ever met, throughout my life. And he got me there to United. And, then afterwards, when I left United at various other clubs that I was at, when I was captain, you had to go in afterwards, before the game, to go and see the referee and, have a chat with the other captain. I remember one specific game was playing against Man City, and I can't remember, it might have been for Stoke. And you had Colo Torre was the captain of Manchester City at the time. So Brian Kidd goes in with Colo Torre, and obviously our assistant manager takes me in. And like kiddos come over and said, how are you doing and everything? And then he started telling Colo Torre, who's obviously won so much in his career, started telling him about, I remember him when he was 10 years old at United at the School of Excellence. And I'm thinking to myself, kiddo, you know what I mean? This is a completely situation. And he's asking me how my mum and dad are and how all the family are in front of the referee who's trying to go through all the rules and everything of the game and what we're supposed to do. But that's just kiddo, just an incredible human being.
Did knowing him in that setup, did he help your development a lot, or was it very much he got you in and then you went away with the staff and the coaches?
No, it was the development of everybody there. Because when Brian took me in, he was, I think he was one of the coaches at the Centre of Excellence, then he became the head of it, and then he eventually became assistant manager. But you had people like him. It was a dream for me, because I was going in, week out, and having coaches train me like Nobby Stiles, England World Cup winner.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Brian Kidd, European Cup winner. Eric Harrison, may rest in peace. I went to his funeral a while ago. One of the greatest ever youth team coaches, Tony Whelan, who still does an unbelievable job there. Paul McGuinness. The list just goes on and on and on. And the great thing about all these coaches was that Sir Alex Ferguson, when he took over at Manchester United, one of the first things he said was that the youth setup here isn't good enough. So he went around himself and brought the coaches in. So you had all the way from, like I say, under 11s, under 12s at the times, Nobby Stiles, Brian Kidd, and all the way through to the reserve team, which was Jim Ryan, who played for Manchester United as well. Everybody was like-minded. So if Nobby Stiles or Brian Kidd, with the youth team, or Jim Ryan with the reserve team, if Sir Alex Ferguson asked him about a player and he said, yep, he's the type of player that we want, Sir Alex Ferguson would have no problem with that player then going training with the first team, because everybody was singing off the same hymn sheet. So it was an incredible upbringing for me, a great experience, and the wealth of knowledge that got passed through to us from all of the coaches, from whether being unbelievable coaches or being unbelievable footballers, world-class footballers, and then becoming great coaches, was just second to none. It's absolutely amazing.
So what position did you play when you was a kid? Was you always in defence, or did you get transition there?
So I started off, I played for a team called Stamford Lads, and I went to a team called Sporting Celtic. And the team that I played for called Sporting Celtic, we played in Timperley in Manchester. And the pitch that we played on was called the Donkey Field. For obvious reasons, it was a mess, complete mess. And we used to get absolutely destroyed every week. And I remember we celebrated one day after a game. Like we were under 10s, we were. And we celebrated because we'd only got beaten 4-0. Brilliant. So after that, I went to Unicorn. Now, Unicorn at the time was like a feeder team for Manchester City.
Much like a Senrab for Chelsea.
Yes, exactly. Very, very, very similar to that. And it was sort of a feeder team. And the managers had an association with Manchester City. So the lads would go there, the feeder groups, and that's how I ended up going there. And then that was in the Timperley League. And then there was another team in the Timperley League called Stretford Vicks. And their manager was a gentleman called Jack Fallows, who was also an inspiration for me, very much very much a father figure in terms of the football side of things. Don't get me wrong, my dad did everything for me and things like that, but you met these figures as you grew up. And he pulled my dad after one season. You know, I think Stretford Vicks had won the league and we'd come second at Unicorn. By this time I was a left winger. And he just said to my dad, he said, listen, we're going over to the Salford League. He said, you know, this league is okay. He said, but we want a tougher league, as in terms of where you're going to have more physicality, and I think that will progress the players. So my dad was like, okay, no problem. So joined Stretford Vicks, and that's where then I went to United, I think, from there. And it was brilliant. I was there for probably maybe Stretford Vicks for 3 or 4 years, but then we had to stop because when was it? I think under 14s or under 15s, you had to stop playing for your Sunday League team and go and play for your School of Excellence, which was, I don't agree with it because, you know, if someone asked me about my junior football, what were the best times for me? It was playing Saturday and Sunday League with my mates, you know, playing in tournaments. It was just a brilliant, it was a great thing. So when that's taken away from you at a young age, then all of a sudden, you know, you can't do those things. It's something that you do miss, but we know that that's the way that football is now. And unfortunately, a lot of grassroots teams, a lot of, you know, junior teams have really suffered from it and gone out of existence. So that would be one thing that you would look to change along the way, but it seems to be very much set in stone now. But it was a great experience for me growing up on all sides. So
you was a left winger, and when you went to United, they said, look, you're not a left winger, you are a defender. You're going to have to get used to it. Was you like pissed off, or was you kind of like, all right, okay, fair play?
No, it was strange because so up to about under 13s, under 14s, I was, you know, normal size for a kid at that age. And then I stopped growing. I just completely stopped growing. And I'm playing left wing. And like, whereas I used to be one of the quickest players on the pitch, all of a sudden, that wasn't the case anymore because these lads that were the same size as me were going well above me, you know, height-wise. And then I never forget I was under 15s and I went to play for the under 16s at United at Littleton Road and was sat in the dressing room. And the manager at the time was a fellow called Dave Bushell, who, you know, he was involved with Greater Manchester and everything. Another wonderful human being, you know, such a great guy. And he read the team out. And when he said number 3 and he said my name, everybody just started laughing, including myself, because I thought it was just a joke. I thought it was a wind-up. I thought he'd got it wrong. And I was like, wait for the team to run out. I've said, Dave, I went, left back. You put me left back. I've been playing left winger centre forward. He went, yeah, but we think this is best for you. And I was like, I don't see, but who am I to argue with you? I'm no one to argue with you, but yeah, I'll go and play left back. And from that point, I didn't look back.
Did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy it?
I did, yeah, because I think because I'd been a left winger, you still had the opportunity to get forward, but instead of me getting the ball and saying, right, okay, well, I've got to run at a fullback now who is taller than me, who's going to be physically stronger than me, it was actually a case of me running onto play or getting beyond the winger. And I really did enjoy that. And then probably about 4 or 5 months after that, that's when I had a growing spurt after that. And, you know, things went really well. And then my first year as an apprentice at United was awful. I think there was 16 of us signed. If they could have cut one lad at the end of the first year of apprenticeship, it would have been me. I was rubbish. And it's not until you look back, but round about, I think it was March, April time, I broke my leg. Well, broke my femur, which is unheard of in football. And Dave Fever, who was a first team physio at United, an absolutely brilliant physio, he came from rugby. He used to be at Wigan. And he said to me after the injury, he said, never known anything like this before in football. And I seen him at Eric Harrison's funeral and he said, you're the only person I've ever dealt with in football that broke the femur. And what it was, because you've got your growth plate up to about 18, 19, I got hit really hard on my knee, but it ricocheted off the growth plate and gave me a horseshoe crack in my femur. And at the time, it was like, right, you're going into last year now as an apprentice. And by the time you get fit, you've got 6 or 7 months to prove that you're actually good enough to warrant a professional contract. And I think that's when the coaching staff and everybody really realised how much that I wanted, because we lived in like Timperley and the training ground was in Salford. So you're talking probably a good, it must be for me, a good 10, 12 miles there. And I would cycle every day in the summer. I put my crutches on my bike, and because it was something I was willing to try anything to try and make as a footballer. And then I'd cycle back every day as well. And I came back September. And whereas I said I had, if they could have got rid of me in that first year, they probably would have done. It was a complete role reversal. My last 7 months, I couldn't have wished for a better 7 months. Everything went my way, and I ended up getting a 2-year professional contract where most lads got a year. And I think that was because they saw potential, but I think they probably saw how much I wanted it, and I was always brought up, I was brought up on a council estate, and, I loved it. It was brilliant. But my mum and dad would always turn around to me when I was playing football, and they were like, when you're older, do you want more than this? Do you want more than this for your family and things like that? So not that I needed that drive, but that was just, the extra motivation side of things. And
it's amazing. I mean, I was going to say, Danny, you couldn't really have been put in a harder position to break into that Man United first team, could you?
No, I couldn't. But the one thing I would say, and the beauty of growing up at that club, was that all the senior players were unbelievable with you, because so many of the senior players had either come through what you were going through at that club or had come from somewhere else. And the one thing that you learn very, very early when you're at a club like Manchester United is you don't have any edge, and you don't have any you don't have a big head or anything. You don't have this arrogance about you. Don't get me wrong, the top players, which United have always had, you've got to have that arrogance on the pitch.
Of course, yeah.
That's why they play for a club like United. But as in terms of you as an individual, that's what Sir Alex Ferguson always used to say to us. When we became apprentices, we all got given suits. So, we had suits, the A team and the B team, then the reserves and the first team all had the same suits. And Sir Alex Ferguson came down and saw us. He said, listen, when you wear this suit, you're representing Manchester United. But when you take that suit off, you're still representing Manchester United.
Yeah.
So when you leave this ground, when you leave this training ground, wherever you are, you're representing this football club. And it's as simple as that. And, you look at the names that were there, your Cantonars, your Keanes, your Giggs, the class of 92 coming through who were a few years older than me, Cole, York, Sheringham, Solskjaer. The list is endless. And they were the most down-to-earth people I've ever met in my life. Really? They were incredible. Yeah, they just had so much time for you. If they saw that you weren't trying to be, trying to be bigger than what you were yourself, they had all the time for you. They would take time just to sit down with you. If you had any problems, they'd chat to you. And these were lads that were, world famous. And it was just, for me, was incredible to understand.
Well, a lot of them quite young at the time, as you say. Like, 92, they were still young footballers.
Yeah.
And they've had a few years of experience, but they're still, compared to, like nowadays, so I'm an Arsenal fan, and we had the likes of Mertesacker, who came in, experienced German centre-back. He was in he was 31, I think, when he joined. That's when I would say you're experienced, you're old. A lot of these players at United at the time were still in their mid-20s, but professionalism of them to sit you down and talk to you and just say, this is how the club's run. I think that's how great Sir Alex Ferguson was. I don't know if you would agree. Like,
he was unbelievable. So, like, when people say now, obviously we've seen United, they always like to promote youngsters. But if we look at recent seasons, you got Brandon Williams just signing a new contract coming through. You got Mason Greenwood. We've had Marcus Rashford coming through at the club. Scott McTominay. And there's no surprise, in my opinion, there's no surprise that when they play for the first team, it's not a problem for them. It's more of an issue, in my mind, if you're brought in to the club at the age of 25, 26, something like that. You can come from a huge club, no doubt about it. But when you look at the young players I've just mentioned, they've had pressure on them from the age of 11. From the age of 11, they've been expected to win every game, every tournament, and win it playing football the right way and winning comfortably. So it's a natural progression. So whether it's been under 14s, under 15s, under 16s, under 18s, under 23s, then through to the first team, the message has always been the same. When you're representing Manchester United out on that pitch, you're expected to win. So when you see the likes of Greenwood, when you see the likes of Rashford, Lingard as well, you go back a little bit further. You look at Brandon Williams, Scott McTominay. Then you look at the class of 92. Then you look at, Wes Brown, John O'Shea. Players like that have come through and been successful at United for a long period. They've had it instilled in them for such a long time that it's not good enough to just be a great football to play for Manchester United.
With Di Maria. when he came to United.
Exactly. There's loads.
He won it all, and then he comes to United.
Wasn't
I
as
just don't
successful.
think it was.
Yeah.
No.
Whereas
Whereas,
players around him.
yeah, whereas these young players that have been coming through for so many years now at United, the transition is easier than if someone's coming from another club, because you have had it drilled into you since whenever you've been at the club, whether it be 11, 12, 13 years of age, that this is what's expected. So when you make that transition to go and play for the first team, okay, you're playing on a greater stage, you know, and all the eyes are on you, but the mentality is still the same. And I think that's a huge thing for young players that are coming through at the club.
So, I'm an Everton fan.
Okay.
Sitting next to him. It's been a bad couple of years for me. But one of the people that I really admire from his time at Everton, and obviously he was at Man United, was Phil Neville.
Yeah,
he was a great captain for us. We did our own, our best teams from our clubs, and Phil Neville was my right back over Seamus Coleman because he was such a good representative of what it meant to be a leader. In an interview, like when he just retired and he talked about that transition going to Everton, he said that Sir Alex Ferguson sat him down and said, look, we've had a bid from a team and I really think you should go there for the development of your career. What was Sir Alex Ferguson, any part of you and your transition of leaving Man United?
Huge part.
Sit down with you and have a chat?
Huge part. Just quickly before you do, Phil Neville and Gary Neville, the two most professional people I've ever worked with in my life. Yeah. It was incredible. So as apprentices, now let's bear in mind, Phil Neville was, when I was a first year apprentice, I think Phil Neville was 18, 19. He was making his name in the first team. His brother Gary had just played in the Euros for England. He was probably 21, 22, one of the best young fullbacks in the Premier League. Okay. And as apprentices, we would be in every day. So Monday to Friday, morning and afternoon. Thursday would be off to go to college. Every couple of weeks, we'd get a Wednesday afternoon off. And when we had that Wednesday afternoon off, more often than not, we'd be in the shower, we'd be getting changed, ready to go. Phil Neville or Gary Neville would put their head round our apprentices' corner into the dressing room and just say, right, lads, we're doing heading practice this afternoon. And it was like, at first, as a 16-year-old, you're like, I just want to go home. Yeah, but then after you'd done it a few times, and this was the whole of the club. After we'd done it a few times, it was like, they are staying in to come and do heading practice with us. Yeah, one's already a fully established England international and a fully established Premier League player. And his younger brother, Phil, is a fully established Premier League player now. So what it did to your mindset was that if it was good enough for them, then it was more than good enough for you. Yeah. And that was the professionalism within the club. But those two, Gary and Phil, you will not meet harder working professionals. It doesn't matter how many clubs you pay for. They were absolutely just phenomenal the way that they were, their training. They trained how they played, and that was always a mantra at United. You know, you listen to first team players from back in that era. You know, Roy Keane said it recently, that he knew that the majority of the times training was going to be harder than the game on the Saturday, which is unbelievable. But going back to Sir Alex Ferguson, yeah, he had a huge part to play with me. So I'd got told at about 9 o'clock in the morning, I'd been tipped off that Derby had put a bid in for me that had been accepted. And I was told that, you know, the manager was going to give me a call. I think my mum and dad were away at the time and I was at home. And he called me and he said, hi, Danny, how you doing? How's your summer and everything? I was like, yeah, you know, it's fine. It's great, Gaffer. And I was like, everything okay? He just said, you know, you've had a really good season. You've done well. But I just need to let you know that Derby have come in. They've put a bid in for you. We've accepted that bid. And, you know, I still have 3 years left on a recently signed contract. And he said, you don't have to go. He said, but you've got Mikel Silvestri, you've got Dennis Irwin, you've got Phil Neville there ahead of you. So he said, you know, I'll give you 24 hours, have a think about it. And I didn't need 24 hours. For me, it was instant, because if Sir Alex Ferguson wanted to keep me, it would have been A, he wouldn't have told me, or B, he would have rang me up to just say, listen, this is to show how well you're doing here. Derby have come in, we've bid for you, we've said no, we believe you can be a Premier League player here. But that was never part of the conversation. And I think one thing I will always say is that whilst I was growing up at the club full-time from 16 to 21, there was a number of players that outstayed their welcome. And I think if you outstay your welcome, your career can be over before it begins. You had lads of 23, 24 years of age playing reserve team football, but they were probably as close to playing for United's first team as us four are sat here now. And I was adamant that I wasn't going to allow that to be me. So I just turned 21 and I said that I was going to give myself one more season. And if nothing had happened, then I would have asked to move, because everybody knows the association with Manchester United can be such a big thing. But if you overstay your welcome, it can be a really bad thing, because you don't go anywhere in your career and you miss your opportunity to go. So for me, it was sink or swim. It was right, okay, the club are prepared to let me go. The manager, the greatest manager that I've ever known or ever seen, has made the decision that he's prepared to let me go. So I've got to go with it, and I sink or swim from it. And in my mind, it was the best decision that I ever made, because people will say, well, what happens if you stayed at the club and there was injuries and things like that? Or I'm honest. I like to think that I'm honest. And I wasn't good enough. That's it. And that's no shame. That team was absolutely, it was on another level.
Bonkers team.
It was an unbelievable team. And for me, it was just a privilege to train every day with them, learn so much from them.
Well, it makes you who you are today, probably.
Of course, yeah. Yeah.
Built the career that you had.
Yeah, you
learned a lot anyway.
Yeah, and I think it teaches you how to be as a human being as well. And I just consider myself very grateful that, I was able to play for the team that I supported on a number of occasions. And that for me was absolutely brilliant. But I knew that my time had come to move on from that phone call, and I had no problems whatsoever. It wasn't a difficult decision, because Sir Alex Ferguson made it easy, because he didn't tell me that it was best for me to leave, but he said it without so many words, and that was enough for me.
How did you find your time at Derby?
It was
3 years?
I was there 2.5 years. It was a steep learning curve for me. Yeah. So the first 6 or 7 months that I was there, I was useless. I remember.
I sense a theme here. There's a theme.
Start bad, but then get better. Slowly but surely, yeah. So no, it was really bad. So I played the first game. We drew 2-2 with Southampton. We went to Newcastle, drew 1-1 maybe, or got beat 1-0. I can't remember. And I played well. And then we went to Goodison Park, and we were 2-0 down at half time. And Nicholas Alexanderson took me to the cleaners. I had to be flipping unwound and everything when I got in the dressing room at half time, and I got dragged off at half time as well. And I was like, wow, what's going on here? But for me, it was a really steep learning curve, because coming from a club like United, you're attacking all the time. You're attacking all the time. So yes, you've got to be able to defend. But I remember Steve Round, who's now one of the assistants at Arsenal, he was assistant at Derby at the time, went on to United. And after we had pre-season sessions, so before the season started, I remember doing this session, and I was just on the floor, and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know whether I'm going to faint first or spew up first. I was just all over the place. And the sun's beaming down at me, and all of a sudden the sun just disappears, and I open my eyes, and it's Steve Round. He's just looking down at me. And I'm like, he looks at me, he just goes, are you all right? And I was like, no. And he went, what's up with you? I went, fitness-wise at United, it was incredible. But this, you've just taken me to another level that I've never been to before. And he went, let me give you a word of advice. United, you spend 80% of the time with the ball. At Derby, you spend 80% of the time chasing the ball. So you have to be fitter. So for those first 6 or 7 months, it was a huge learning curve for me. And then I finished the season really well. And the next season on a personal level went really well for me. I got Player of the Year, got Players Player of the Year, got East Midlands Player of the Year. We ended up getting relegated, which was obviously not nice. But we had 3 managers in a year. But from a personal perspective, it was the time really that I felt that I'd made myself a Premier League player, and I felt as though I belonged there. So it was a good year for me personally.
Yeah. So before Derby, though, you went on loan, didn't you, to Royal?
Yeah.
And it's a similar situation.
It's exactly the same.
Awful. But then you ended up bringing it back, and the fans apparently loved you.
It was crazy. So we're going to go down the similar theme, which was first few games. First few games I was useless, right? So my first game we played a team called Molenbeek, who was big rivals of Antwerp at the time, and it was live on TV. And you're going into the game, and you think to yourself, right, just just don't do anything stupid. You don't need to do anything stupid. Just find your feet. You know, it's your first real experience. I played 25 minutes for United in the last game of the Premier League game season the year before. But other than that, it was my first like real experience of first team football. So I'm like going onto the pitch and the manager's just like, you don't have to prove anything, you know, because I was only 19 at the time. So go onto the pitch, go and enjoy yourself, go and express yourself, but don't do anything stupid. I give away a penalty in the 80th minute and we got beat 1-0.
Jesus.
And I'm thinking, oh God. So I've gone into the dressing room and the manager's like, don't worry about it. It's your first game, whatever. So we've gone back to the stadium. Everything's fine. Second game, we play at home. We get beat, I think, 2-0. And I'm like, oh God, I'm going to get a lot of the blame for this. I'm coming from United and everyone's expecting me to change things. Everything was all right. Third game, we go away and we play this team and we play unbelievably well. And if I tell you that we should have beaten them 8-5 but got beaten 5-0, it would be no exaggeration. But instead of beating them, but instead of beating them 8-5, we got beat 5-0. So then we're on the bus and we're on the way back to the stadium, and loads of fans are waiting for us. And I'm thinking to myself, me being like a kid at the time and turning around to the other players that have been there, and I'm like, tell you what, it's unbelievable. The fans are waiting for us, just to tell us to keep going and things like that. And the senior lads have just looked at me and not said a word. I thought something ain't right here. So all the senior players have gone off and everything. Everything's been all right. They've been fine with him. I walked off. Oh my God, all hell broke loose. They all wanted to flip him, beat the crap out of me. This 19-year-old kid, there's about 150 of them waiting outside the bus just for me.
Oh my God. What?
I was like, oh no, this ain't going to end well. And the manager's wife had seen what was happening. She ran over and she went ballistic. She shoved them all out of the way, and then I've walked into the ground. The manager's come in and his wife's come in and they've gone, we're really sorry about that. And I just said, I want to go home. I want to go home. I said, I've not signed up for this. You know, I'm a 19-year-old kid and I've come here. The club wasn't going so well before, but now the results aren't going great still. And the buck falls with me, you know, and I admit that I didn't have a great start, as I said. And the manager said to me, he said, listen, he said, please come out for a meal with me and my wife tomorrow. He said, if I can't change your mind, then he said, I will personally pay for flight tickets for you to go back home to Manchester. So I was like, okay, no problem. So I went and sat down with him and his wife. We went out to this seafood restaurant. And he just said to me, just give me all the old lines, you know, we're really close to getting things right. And I'm saying to him, we just got beat 5-0. How can we be? How can we be? So we just got beat 5-0, but you're telling us we're close to getting things right. I'm walking off the bus and I'm being told that I'm the biggest so-and-so around and, you know, telling me to piss off with my passport back home. So I don't see how close we are to getting things right here. And I'm like, what is getting things right to you? Is it like getting beat 1-0? Is it like me not getting chased off the bus after a game? Is that like a, you know, positive that we're going forward? And he said, please, he said, just trust me. He said, give me a month and I promise you that things will turn around. If after a month we haven't turned things around, he said, I will drive you to the airport and I will pay for your flight and everything, you know, I'll wish you on your way. We went and won the next 12 games. And we were top of the league at Christmas. Wow. And 3 games afterwards, after all this mither, I was starting to play better. So obviously, it seems to happen all the time. So I started to play better and we played this team, and I think they were called Dines. And we played them away from home. And wherever we went away, if the usual gate of the opposition was, say, 2,000, it would be 5,000 because Antwerp was a huge club. You've got to remember, 7 years previously, they'd got to I think it was the Cup Winners' Cup final where they played Parma at Wembley. I think it was Parma. And so we played away at Dines and we'd won the game, I think 1 or 2-0. So I get in the dressing room and everyone's like, we just feel something starting to happen now. Things are starting to go our way. And all of a sudden you hear this. I'm like, I'm just hearing this banging. I'm looking around. I'm like, you can look through the glass windows and there's nothing. This banging just keeps happening. I'm looking around and then this banging's coming from above me. So I look up and there's this fella bare-chested, no pants on. He's just got his underpants on and he's on the roof, got a pair of trainers on and a pair of underpants. And I'm like, he's pointing at me and I'm like, we've just won 3 games in a row. You can leave me alone now. You can't have anything more for me. And he's just pointing at me and he's like banging his chest. He had Antwerp tattoos, just covered head to toe in Antwerp tattoos. So I've just like way back and everything. And I've gone outside And he has come up to me and he's given me the biggest bear hug and he's crying his eyes out. And he was the fella that gave me dog's abuse when I got off the bus. Yeah. And he just he was bawling his eyes out and he went, Danny, he said, you have to understand. He said, this club to me is everything and I'm really, really sorry. And my relationship from that day with the supporters just went bigger and bigger and bigger, to the point where I'm on loan there. They had a song for me, and then obviously there was trouble afterwards. But then the next season, because of what had happened, being accused of beating up a referee and everything like that, which by the way didn't happen. Yeah. Every game the following season, they had banners with me and Ronnie, who was the other lad that got in trouble with me.
Yeah.
There, and they were just incredible. And it's a club that, as a player, if you go there and you give everything that you've got, you will they will never forget it. And it was an unbelievable experience for me. And I would say that I went there a young boy, I would say, and I came back a young man. And it was an unbelievable experience for me, the ups and the downs, and I wouldn't have changed it for anything.
That's amazing.
That's fantastic.
Danny, tell me if this is out of order or it's wrong, but would you say that in parts of your career you were slightly written off before you even got to the club, or not?
I wouldn't say written off. I think the biggest compliment that I get that I can possibly accept, and some people take it as like a little bit of someone having a go at you.
Yeah.
But the greatest thing the best thing anyone can ever say to me is that I overachieved. Some people take that as a little bit of criticism. I don't take that as criticism. I think it's the best compliment that you can have, because if people are saying that you overachieved, that means you're playing higher than possibly the level you should have been at.
Agreed.
Now that'll do me.
Yeah.
If you're an overachiever for the majority of your life, that's a great thing. Rather than someone coming up to you, because the one thing I always said from being a kid was I would really hate for someone to come up to me after my career's finished and go, and someone turn around to me and go, you could have done more in your career.
Oh, yeah.
But I knew when I walked away from my career that I couldn't have done any more than what I did. I know that there was players that were technically better than me that didn't have the career that I had, but I like to think that it was my dedication and my desire, which was instilled at me at United, and then took me forward, enabled me to have the career that I had, which, to your top Premier League players, it's not much. It's not a great career because you haven't won anything, you haven't won the trophies. But for me as an individual, I was delighted with it. So if anyone comes up to me and says, you're overachieved, I'll go back to him. Yeah, you're not wrong.
Yeah, thanks for
happy
that.
about that. Yeah, but no, it wasn't a case of proving people wrong. I think what happened was probably throughout my career, especially as a youngster, I was sort of probably a late developer in terms of the physical attributes inside of things. So it was difficult for me then, but it was a real good learning curve for me, that realizing what you had to do to have that career in football. And, I never took any of it for granted, especially breaking my leg at the age of 17. And I was 70% against ever playing again. Now, that's what the surgeon told me, because my leg, if it didn't mend properly, then I was gonna have a limp for the rest of my life. But fortunately, the surgeon did an unbelievable job, and it worked out well for me. So I never took football for granted.
So you saying there where you say you're an overachiever. I think Tony Pulis bought a team of, as you put it, overachievers together at Stoke, and for them to maintain how long they did in the Premier League. I hated Everton.
Don't even
we lost so many times against.
Could have been Arsenal.
And I
being
hated
Arsenal,
it.
Being Arsenal, I'm sorry, Rory Delat lobbing that ball in. I'm fucking sick of that. I used to sit there and thought, I was just like, here we go, right.
It was brilliant.
What was the atmosphere like in that dressing room, knowing that you've just come up with Stoke, and Stoke had just come up, and they're like, lads, we're like 8th in the Prem. We're 8th in the Prem, and all we're doing is
throwing the ball in the box,
and booing it along. What was that like?
It was unbelievable. But what I would say with Tony Pulis is that he got the best out of players. But what he was very clever at doing was bringing in players that were at a crossroads in their career. So I'd been relegated with Southampton, had a year with Southampton, I'd fallen out with the chairman at Southampton. And he was like, right, okay, come to this club and we'll get things going again for you. You know, Matty Everington, Ricardo Fuller, Jermaine Pennant, Rory Delap, the list goes on. He brought players that were probably having a little bit of a bad time. The performances weren't up to the quality that they had been, but he trusted himself to bring the best out in them. Matthew Everington's a prime example. How he didn't get an England call-up when he was at Stoke is beyond me.
My fantasy Premier League team that year, my word, he got me so many points.
He was unbelievable.
I had like a midfield of Everington, Lampard, Gerrard, and then a top three of like Kevin Nolan, Kevin Davis, and Didier Drogba, and it was like, what's going on here then?
But that and Matty, like I had the pleasure. He was playing left wing in front of me, and used to give him the ball and say, "Right, go and do what you want to do." Yeah. And he had everything. He had the pace, he had the skill, his delivery into the box, and that's what Tony Pulis did. He brought players in. You know, he nicknamed us the Battersea dog, whatever it was. You know, and players could have taken an exception from that, but we didn't, because that was us. Yeah. You know, and people say like the first game against Arsenal when we beat them 2-1 at home, the first game in the Premier League. Afterwards, Arsene Wenger called us a rugby team.
Yeah.
Now, most people would have gone, how dare he say that? We loved it, because Arsene Wenger, one of the greatest managers in Premier League history, was talking about us. So we just used it for fuel to enable us to go.
Results, Danny. That's the thing.
That's it. And I think
getting results. Whether you play great football, well, stereotypical.
No, it's true.
About actual football, or lumping it forward, knock down, goal.
Yeah.
If you're still getting results, does it really matter?
There's a snobbery in football.
Tony Pulis definitely brought to Stoke, and and as I say, and as George says, we hated it.
Oh,
hated it.
Yeah, there's a real snobbery in football now, which says that you have to play one way. Well, no, because if we'd have gone up at the time as Stoke and said, right, okay, well, we're going to go toe-to-toe with Arsenal, we're going to go toe-to-toe with Man United, it would have been double figures against us every week. Yeah. So what you have to do is find something that you're good at, that you can outplay. You only have to be better than what you were doing than three other teams, being better at what they did. Now, the great teams at the time, which in my mind was Chelsea and Manchester United, they would come to our place and they'd say, right, okay, you want to scrap with us? We'll out-scrap you, and then our quality would come through. And that's what the best teams did. Yeah. You know, but not many of the teams could do that. United could do that. Chelsea could do that. But if you look at the other teams that came to us, the other big teams, they struggled to do that. And I remember we played, I don't know if it was the first season, like deep into the season, we played Hull City at home. It was either the first season or the second season. And the ball went back to their goalkeeper, and our centre forward's closing him down. So instead of putting it out for a throw, he turned towards his own goal and put it out for a corner.
What
are you doing? He's like, I ain't giving you a throw-in. I'd rather deal with a corner than a throw-in.
Yeah,
fair play.
So it always had. So you knew before the game that you were playing at the weekend, if you were playing at home, you knew that a large majority of the opposition's week will have been taken up, not necessarily on how they play, but on how they can deal with our throws into the box.
You was in their heads, Danny.
That's the thing.
You was in their heads. They were already thinking, as you say, kick out for a corner.
Exactly.
Kick out for a throw, because there is trouble here.
It was crazy, but I'm not just saying it's like you would, for the first year and a half with Stoke in the Premier League, without fail, you would walk out every home game and the hairs would stand up on the back of your neck.
Yeah.
And that was without fail. Even as the home team, you may have played there 20 times, whatever, 30 times. That atmosphere still got to you. And I believe that like teams were okay. They'd come to the stadium and the warm-up would be fine. And then they'd line up in the tunnel. And when that noise hit them, I believe that home games, we probably won 60% of our games before a ball was kicked. Because it was just a ferocious atmosphere. And it was something that the top players and the top teams, they dealt with it, and they dealt with it well. And I give them full respect for that, full credit for that, because they would come and they say, right, you want to scrap? We'll scrap you physically, and then our quality will come through. And that's what the top teams did against us.
It was quite a tight tunnel, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was tight. But
it's much like Goodison Park. You know, it's so
it is tight, yeah.
So compact that when you hear something like, you know...
Oh, when you heard the noise.
Everton, it's intimidating. And the roar of the crowd. I can imagine Stoke. you know, you've actually got the kind of meme thing of, can you do it on a cold or Tuesday night in Stoke? I mean, that's come from you guys being that team that's so physical and so intimidating, even before a ball's kicked. What was it like getting to integrate with the Stoke fans? Were they quite loving towards you?
Yeah, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Because the one thing is with Stoke, and unfortunately, they're, you know, hopefully the new manager now, you know, Michael O'Neill can instill that again. They lost their identity over the years, and one of the things that I would say what Tony Pulis did really well is that he signed players that went hand in hand with the supporters. So, for example, when you were out on the pitch, you running 30 yards and putting a crunching tackle in meant more to the fans at the time than doing a Cruyff turn and taking 2 players out of the game.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing for me, and I've said it on numerous occasions, is that what you want the team, to mirror the manager, but you want the team to mirror the area as well. And Stoke was a working class area. And these supporters that came to the ground every week, they were spending their hard-earned money to come and watch this team. And what they wanted to see was a team that, okay, you know, you're going to get beat your fair share, but the fans could deal with that as long as you put a shift in. Yeah. If you put a shift in, there'd be no problem. I've played in some games there earlier on where we've been winning 1-0, playing really, really bad, and been booed off at halftime. You know, so, but you take the rough with the smooth, and that's when, like, you see some people will come out and say, well, God, I can't believe how the fans are with that team or that team. You can't have it both ways. And that's what I always said, you know, being fortunate enough to play for a club like Stoke that have the passionate fans that they have, is that you can't have them behind you, but then when things are going wrong, tell them, well, no, you don't say anything to us. You've got to take the rough with the smooth. If you want that atmosphere, same when I was at Sunderland. If you want that atmosphere and this 100% backing, you've got to understand that when things are going wrong, and and there may be individuals, or it may look like a team collectively, that aren't doing everything they can do to win the game, you're going to be told as well. And if you respect that, and if you understand, and if you understand that, you take the good times with the bad. And it was great times at Stoke the first few years in the Premier League.
I must ask something, Danny. That Ricardo Fuller goal against Aston Villa, it is not talked about enough, is it?
No, it's unbelievable. That was about a week or so before I joined.
Okay.
But that's Ricardo down to a T, because I was with Ricardo. So Ricardo joined in the Championship. I joined in the Championship and then went to Sunderland for a year, the year that Stoke got promoted. And when I signed for Stoke, Tony Pulis, you know, I was Tony Pulis' first signing back in charge. And we went upstairs into like one of the boardrooms, and he just said to me, he said, Dexter Blackstock or Ricardo Fuller, because they were both at Southampton at the time. Yeah. And I said, listen, Dexter is a good player. He's going to have a good career, but Ricardo Fuller every single day of the week. Because what Ricardo could do is turn a scrappy game into a 1-0 with a bit of magic. Now, I know you talk about that Aston Villa goal, which was an unbelievable goal, but one of the most memorable games I played in was at Upton Park when we beat West Ham 1-0. And if I remember right, I think he was a sub, and he came on, and it was such a physical game. Every player giving everything they've got. I remember one of the first headers I went up with was with Carlton Cole, and I elbowed him in the head. First thing I've done, I've gone down, I've seen him, was like, listen, you owe me one. You owe me one. I said, because I've caught you, I've not meant to catch you. And about 5 minutes later, he's caught me. And it was just one of those games, group of really honest players. And then he come on with about 20 minutes to go. We took a throw in, and then it was just hit long. He controlled the ball on the edge of the area, nutmegged one player, took another player on, and then just put it in the corner, and then just jogged off as though it was a normal day at the office for him. And that's what he could do. Those first couple of seasons in the Premier League, he brought the X factor to us that would turn a 0-0 into a 1-0. And Ricardo, you know, in my opinion, if he didn't have the injuries that he had, he would have played higher in the Premier League. He was, on his day, unplayable. He was that good a player, and he was a great guy as well. Real good guy.
It's amazing. I was going to say as well really quickly about Stoke now. Obviously, I saw when Nathan Jones went there from Luton, I thought that was quite a shrewd appointment.
Yeah.
Something different, a bit of fresh air, and obviously it didn't work out. But Michael O'Neill is a big manager to get in the Championship. What do you think about them next year?
I think they've got themselves, they got themselves out of a relegation fight, and you hope that it's a very positive experience for the players this year, because there's no doubt they've got good players. In my mind, they've got one of the best squads in the league. But it's been a long period. You can't just blame one manager. You had Mark Hughes. Obviously, people forget he had three ninth place finishes in a row. Okay, he left. Paul Lambert then comes in. Gary Rowett then comes in. Then Nathan Jones. Then you've got Michael O'Neill. So what it's not about the managers, and it's not about the players. It's the whole package. Yeah. And I think somewhere along the way, Stoke City lost their way, and they forgot their principles, which can happen. We see it happening year on year out in the Premier League. What you cannot do is ever forget what got you to where you are. You can't ever lose those principles, because if you lose those principles, then unfortunately, you're going to end up back where you were to start off with. Yeah. And, with Stoke now, it's imperative that they have a good season next year, because it'll be their third season out of the Premier League. And we know what it's like, your parachute payments and everything financially, it will take its toll as well. So they've got to make a real fist of it next year. But Michael O'Neill, you can tell he's trying to put things right now, and they had a strong finish to the season, which hopefully bodes well for the start of next.
Definitely.
I actually wanted to ask you something. So, throughout your career, you've trained with some great players. I want to know who's the best trainer, so the best player training with, and the worst player to train with.
Oh, I'd say the worst was Ricardo.
That weirdly doesn't shock me.
No.
Well, the thing is with Ricardo, you didn't care. Yeah. There wasn't a problem, because what you did, you had players throughout your career that you would see during the week, and it'd be like, come on, you get a little bit more. But there was players like Rick where you just go, just leave him, because you know what? On a Saturday, he's going to turn up. On a Saturday, he's going to turn up, so it doesn't matter. But then flip that on its side, on the other way. I remember Tony Pulis used to come. You used to have players that were unbelievable during the week, but then on Saturday didn't turn up. And Tony Pulis used to call them midweek internationals. So for every, you had Ricardo Fuller. At Derby, you had Georgie Kincladze. That may not necessarily be the greatest trainers, but you knew on a Saturday they were going to get you that victory, whether it be by an assist, whether it be by a goal. So you dealt with that every single day of the week. It wasn't a problem, because you knew when Saturday 3 p.m. come, those players were there, and it wasn't going to be an issue. So I'm trying to think. You had players like, when he was at Southampton under Gordon Strachan, Chris Marsden.
Yep.
One of the fittest lads that I ever played with. Unbelievable. Had a great time at Southampton. John Walters at Stoke. And that lad, he had 2 iron lungs, I'm sure of it. He would just be go, go, go. And he'd just be like non-stop. And then we had Paul Telfer at Southampton. So when we were at Southampton, my first pre-season, I joined Southampton in the January, and it was myself and David Prutton. So David Prutton, he came from Forest, and I came from Derby. So we get to pre-season, and we flew to St Andrews. So obviously you've got the beautiful golf course, you've got the beautiful hotel there. We stayed in hostels next to St Andrews, so you could see it, but you couldn't go anywhere near it. And we would have, I think, 2 or 3 sessions in the day. And what we did, we landed. Gordon Strachan at the time, who was another brilliant man manager, he said to us, right, go and get some food. And then what we're doing, we're going straight down to this field, and we're doing a 5-mile run. And so we get to the starting line, and everyone's saying, like to the new lads, listen, whatever you do, Paul Telfer's going to take off. Do not follow him. Don't follow him, because you'll leave us behind, but then he's going to leave you behind, and you're going to get dragged back with us, because Telf, he will just run, and he doesn't slow down, never gets tired. So Prutz is a fit lad. Dave Prutz is a fit lad, and I'm thinking to myself, you're going to go toe-to-toe with him, aren't you? I can just see him. So he sets off, and it's like a huge loop. So Paul Telfer sets off. Dave Prutz goes with him. So he's running with him. And I'm like, about a mile done, and I'm like, bloody hell, Prutz, you're doing unbelievably well. He was keeping up with him, bearing in mind we're like a quarter of a mile behind him. Next thing, you see Telf just going off in the distance, and Prutz is just coming like this. He's just coming back towards the group, he's coming back towards the group, and he just gets dragged into our group. And he came just in front of me and Rory Delap, because me and Rory were not long distance running. We got beat by the goalkeepers.
Yeah. Oh God.
Yeah. Me and Rory, we came last. We came last with flying
The way
colours.
you said that was like you was after him, but actually you was last.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no. He came back into our group, but he was still more than enough to beat us. Me and Rory could not run anything long distance, and it was hard. But yeah, they were probably some of the best trainers that I ever played with. But I've got to say, I've always been, like, joking aside, and like I say with Ricardo, it wasn't his lack of effort whatsoever in training. But it was just like sometimes he'd get frustrated and he'd get annoyed. But we were just like, don't worry about it, Rick. Don't worry about it, Rick. And the manager was like that, because you understand managers have to be like that with certain players. Rick was brilliant in the dressing room. And if a training session where it was like, oh, you know what, it's not great today, we didn't care, because you knew he was going to deliver on the Saturday. Yeah. If it was somebody that wasn't going to deliver on the Saturday, then you'd be a little bit more annoyed. Because it was Rick, and he was a game changer, and he was a game winner for us. Like Kincladze at Derby as well. It was just, they just had ability that very few other players in your squad actually had. I remember Kincladze, when he was at Derby, we were playing Leeds when Leeds were, one of the top teams, and we were getting beat 1-0. So Georgie comes on with about 15 minutes left, something like that, and he gets thrown the ball by the full-back. And he nutmegs two of their lads and just puts the ball in the back of the net and just walks off. And we're all going crazy about, like, what a goal. And he's just like, yeah, what of it? It's just something that he did. He was... Yeah,
just normality.
Oh, he was phenomenal. Phenomenal with the ball at his feet. He was unbelievable. And like I say, the players like him, like Ricardo, it was a joy to have them as my teammates, because they could do things that could just flip a game on its head. You were there as a defender, trying to block shots and block crosses and things like that. But then the business end, you get the ball to them, and the things that they could do, you just admired them. And that's why you accepted certain times in training where it's like, oh, they weren't great today in training. But like I say, it didn't matter, because we knew what the end result was going to be at the weekend.
Yeah, match day, they'll sign up.
Was Paolo Wontrop at Derby when you was there?
No, he was there. He was there before me. When I was there, we sat at... Stefano Aranio was there, who was another brilliant player, played at AC Milan, internationals and things like that. We signed for Fabrizio Ravanelli when I was there as well.
Yeah. That's a character, isn't it?
A few years previously, he was playing on my computer game.
Yeah,
exactly. All of a sudden, I'm like playing next to him. Like, he was, you're coming from the dressing room United, which had obviously all world-class talents, but Ravanelli was another one of them. Yeah. And one of the best trainers I've ever... And he was getting towards the latter stages of his career, first in, last out. He was brilliant, and the game meant so much to him. So we played Newcastle away, and we were getting beat 1-0, and he had a penalty and he missed it. And he was devastated about it. And then either the next week or a few weeks later, we played Liverpool at home, and he missed a penalty again. I've gone into our dressing room, and I got on well with Rav. He was great with the younger lads. And where Derby's dressing room, so you had the area where you got changed, and there was a little door there which had like an AstroTurf area where people, you could go and warm up and do your own thing. And he disappeared in there after the Liverpool game, and he was crying his eyes out. This lad that had won European Cups, won titles, had all these individual, trophies and things like that. You realised how much it meant to him. And I've just gone up to him, like, is it what was I, 21, 22 maybe at the time? I was like, Rob, what are you doing? He goes, I've let the team down. I've let the team down twice now. I'm really emotional. I was like, no, you haven't. The goals you're scoring for us and everything. So then you fast forward the clock about 5 or 6 months. We played Bolton away, and we were drawing 1-1, and we got a penalty. So like, Rav picks the ball up, and I'm like, right, young kid, but I've had a decent career. So I've gone up to Rav and I've gone, Rav, listen, don't worry about what's gone on in the past. This is me flipping snotty nose, flipping 22, talking to this legend. And I've gone up to her and I've gone, Rab, listen, don't worry about what's coming in the past. I know you've missed a couple of penalties, but you're going to score this. And then as a throwaway line, I just say to him, if you don't want to take it, I'll take it. Right? He gave me the ball.
Yeah,
What?
he took it. Yeah,
No way.
I
He
read
gave me the
about
ball.
this.
And I'm like, oh, shit. No.
What?
This wasn't supposed to happen. This was like a throwaway comment.
That's
And
amazing.
he just goes, there you go, Danny. And I'm like, oh my God, so now I've got to take a penalty. And I'm thinking, God, I better not miss this now.
Oh,
So
no.
fortunately, I scored. My brother was in the way end. He jumped on the pitch, got arrested and chucked out the ground. So it was an eventful afternoon.
That's
but yeah,
phenomenal,
I was just like, he gave me the ball and I was like, all right, okay, what do I do now? But fortunately, I scored. I hit it to the goalkeeper's right, which is the only time that I've ever done that. Because every time I go to the goalkeeper's left with my left foot, because then you're always thinking it's going away from
Safe side.
Yeah. So the goalkeeper's left and going away from him. So, fortunately, throughout my career, I never missed a penalty, which was good. But yeah, that was just a mad occasion where he just gave him the ball, and I was like, yeah, that really shouldn't have happened.
That's
absolutely
incredible
Oh, for
story.
fuck's sake, what have I said?
It was crazy.
So as you said, you moved to Sunderland for a year, come back to Stoke, and then you're part of that team that does that wonder run to the FA Cup final.
Yeah.
What was it like playing at Wembley? It was the new Wembley in the FA Cup final, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, but like it was the most difficult point of my career because we played in the quarterfinals and I scored the winner against West Ham, went to Wembley, and then two weeks before the semi-final. Sorry, after the West Ham game, we played Newcastle at home and I scored in that game as well. And I was just enjoying football. I was in like great form. It was great. And then two weeks before the semi-final, we played Chelsea. And it was a really good game against them. We were drawing 1-1 and we'd been the better team in the second half. And we got a corner in the last minute. So I'm running up. But I'm running up with no intention because usually at that time, I'm hearing Tony Pulis saying to what the FNL you doing, get back.
Get back,
But he didn't shout at me because like he'd obviously seen, I scored in the last two games, so maybe I could do it again. So I've gone up for a header with Petr Cech. And I've got there before him. It's got cleared off the line. But as I landed on a straight leg. And Petr Cech, I'm not kidding you, he hardly touched me. It was such a light touch, but because he caught me on a straight leg, my knee buckled and went left and went right. So then I'm on the floor. I'm in absolute agony. And then Petr Cech, obviously, he's trying to make sure I'm all right. Meanwhile, Chelsea going down the other end, they've nearly scored. And I'm in agony and I'm kicking the floor. And then all the pain goes away and the physio comes and I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, you must have looked like a right idiot there. You've gone through all this pain, all the pain's gone now. So our physio comes on and the doctor comes on. They're like, are you all right? And I was like, I was in excruciating pain. So, but all the pain's gone now, so I think I'm all right. So I'm like, okay, they check my knee and everything. They go, okay, we think everything's all right. So I've gone off to the side and I've come onto the pitch. It's only about 2 or 3 minutes left. And then I've gone up for a header. And as I've landed, my right knee's just like this in the wind.
Oh my God.
And I've just like, no, I just sat down on the pitch. Oh. And then some of the Chelsea players, they're trying to drag me off the pitch because obviously they want to try and continue the game.
Oh,
I'm like,
mate.
no, I'm not going off. I'll just, have to walk off. So I walked off. And then on the Monday, I went for an MRI scan. And you have the people that take care of the MRIs. And I said to the fella there, I was like, I know you can't give me the results, but come on, just give me a bit of an idea. And he went, the only thing I would say to you is, if I didn't know better, I'd think you've been in a skiing accident.
Jesus.
I was like, so it's that bad, is it?
It's
and they were
serious,
like, yeah. So I've gone back, and then we were doing headshots for the semi-final and the cup final, and I had to get up on my crutches on a stage and stand there. And I was just like, this is humiliating for me because at the end of the day, I'm not going to be involved in it. So I don't even want anything to do with this. And then all the lads went down to Wembley to go and see it the week before we played there. Meanwhile, I'm getting ready for my operation. And I went and saw a doctor off my own back and just said, listen, can you give me injections to play in this game? And he was like, what do you mean? I said, well, can you just give me an injection? He said, well, not really. So I went and spoke to our doctor at the club and I went, listen, I've never played at Wembley. It's my only chance to play at Wembley. Inject me. Just inject me so I can play, just take the pain away. And he was like, you don't understand, I can't do that. And I went, well, why? I've got to have this operation. And he said, you don't understand, you've got no cruciate. Your cruciate's completely torn. That's why you've got no pain. Because the nerve endings have all gone. Everything's finished, done. So if I give you injections, all you're going to do, you're going to walk on the pitch, you're going to fall over. You might not have been in pain, but you just fall over.
I just got that's. I've got the image in my head of you just walking on Wembley and just
falling over. Yeah. So I was like, okay, no problem. So then obviously I got the operation done and everything, and it was really difficult for me going to the semi-final and the cup final, because you're there for your team, you're there for your teammates, and you want them to do well. But you've just got this jealous feeling about you.
Yeah.
You're like, they win the FA Cup, they're going up to lift the FA Cup, and I'm just here. That's not fair if they go and win the FA Cup. And it's a horrible feeling. It's a horrible feeling. And like I say, I opened up about that a while ago, and people, some supporters gave me stick. And I said, well, it's my honest feelings of how I was feeling. Yes, you know what? I want the team to do well, but I'm jealous. And I didn't want anything to do with the semi-final. I certainly didn't want anything to do with the final. I just wanted it to all be over and just me go home and carry on with my rehab. And that was me being a very jealous individual.
Yeah.
And I was happy for the lads, but there was part of me that was like, come on, let's just end this journey now. I'm not part of it now. And it just wasn't. And it's a difficult thing, because I was on the bench for Southampton in the FA Cup final against Arsenal in 2003. So I got a medal for that, and then I got a medal for the FA Cup final with Stoke. The two medals, I don't even know where they are. They mean absolutely nothing to me, because the one for Southampton, I was on the bench and I joined the club in January, and I felt as though like I'd gatecrashed this success that Southampton were having. And then the one with Stoke, I had no part to play in the semi-final or the final. So and each to their own, because there'll be other lads that say, no, I deserve that medal because I've travelled everywhere. I'm not saying that that's not right. But from my perspective, I had no effect on that game whatsoever. I didn't take part in that game. So to me, it doesn't mean anything to me. Whereas other people say, well, you scored the winner that got us to Wembley in the quarter-final, but that was previous rounds. And that's just how I felt. Whereas you'll have other lads that will say, no, I do feel part of it. And that's brilliant. It's each to their own. But for me, not participating in it, not stepping foot on the pitch and not being part of the game meant that I had no right to have that medal, even though it was a loser's medal. I didn't deserve it.
I heard Robbie Savage saying exactly the same thing last week on BT, saying that he was sitting in the stand with Birmingham. I think it might have been at Birmingham. I don't know whereabouts.
Right.
He was saying there was a ball that went back post in the last minute to possibly win the game 2-1. And he was just thinking, please miss, please miss, please miss, because he'd never played at Wembley. And he wasn't going to get that chance. So I know it sounds awful, but at the same time,
it's so difficult, and you want the team to do well because these are your teammates, and you want them to be successful. But there is that element of jealousy, from yourself that like, well, I'm not playing there. Don't get me wrong. If they'd have won the FA Cup, if Stoke City had won the FA Cup, unbelievable for all my teammates and things like that. But it wouldn't have meant a thing to me, because I wasn't part of that team that won the FA Cup. Or, all right, they got to the final. They were absolutely on another level. Beat Bolton in the semi-final 5-0. One of the best team performances that I've seen. I wasn't part of that. So as far as I was concerned, I didn't earn the right or deserve the right to be part of that cup final team, regardless of the fact that I would have played if I wasn't injured. But the fact was I was injured, so I didn't play. So it means nothing to me whatsoever. And like I say, it might be the right thing or it might be the wrong thing, but it doesn't mean anything to me, because I didn't deserve that. I didn't play in that game to deserve that medal.
But at least you're honest about it. That's the thing.
Yeah, you've got to be, I think.
Yeah, because you could sit there and go, oh yeah, well I got to an FA Cup final, and if you're not being true to yourself, then I feel like, it's almost like it's like hiding something that you don't really, or you're shameful about, if you know what I mean. But it's strange to hear that honesty from someone who's gone so far in a competition. And thank you for that honesty, because
it's fine.
I genuinely didn't know that you were injured when I asked that.
Yeah, it's like I say, it was it was really difficult because you wanted to, when you're injured, a lot of the times you end up wanting to isolate yourself because the lads are training week in, week out. They've got games week in, week out, and you're not part of it. And as much as the lads will want to be around you, and much of the lads want to G you on, it's not the same. You end up fighting your own battle. It's you, because your mentality and everything has to change. And like I say, you know, it was the best dressing room that I've ever been in. And I wanted them to win the semi-final. I wanted them to win the FA Cup final. But there was a part of me that didn't. And I'd be a liar if I sat here with you and just said, no, you know what? I was made up for him doing this, doing that, because it's the jealousy side of thing, and it's human nature. Now, there'll be some people that look around and go, wow, I can't believe that you'd think that or that you'd say that. But it was just how it was. And there may be other lads that wouldn't say it but would think it.
Yeah.
But that was just that was my issue. That's no one else's issue. None of my teammates' issue. That was my issue, which was a simple fact of there was a real big amount of jealousy around it.
No, that's totally fair. So, obviously, the football career, you ended up going to play non-league, and then how was that transition getting into TV and punditry? It
was fine for me, and it worked well because I went to Sheffield United for, I think I was there from January till the end of the season.
Yeah.
And I had to play a certain amount of games, and then I would get a contract for the next year. So at this time, like I say, I was 34. And the one thing I would say is that I did my cruise shirt at 32. And that was the beginning of the end for me, because when I came back, first of all, I came back far too quickly. And I was still, and I never forget my first game back, we played, I think it was Maccabi Tel Aviv in the Europa League. We won 1-0, and I played fine and played well, but I was running with a limp. But you don't want to acknowledge these things at the time. Because I was just desperate to get back. And then we got beat away at Bolton 5-0. And then the manager said to me, right, I want to play you. I want to play you next week against QPR. So I was like, brilliant, yeah, I'm up for it. Nobody really protected me though. None of the physios turned around and go, hang on a second. All he's played is a couple of games under 23 football, and he's come on once for you in the Premier League, and he's played 90 minutes in the Europa League. He isn't ready. And my last Premier League game for Stoke was awful. I think we were winning 1-0, got beat 2-1, and I was a million miles away from where I needed to be. And that was the fact that the injury had taken its toll, without doubt. And the game had moved on from me. And I had a loan spell at Forest, which I really enjoyed. Then I went to Ipswich, then I went to Sheffield United. And when I got to Sheffield United in January, played a certain amount of games, and then you had another contract for the next year. And, the manager changed in the summer. And it went from Danny Wilson had been there. Then Chris Morgan took over with David Unsworth, another two great lads. And then David Weir came in, ex-Everton player. He came in and he wanted to go down the route of the younger players. And I get that. I understood that. And I never forget, like, I went to see him because I just said to him, listen, if you don't want me involved, that's absolutely fine. If you want me here to be, to be that senior player in the dressing room, then that's fine as well. Whatever you want to do. I'm a senior player now, and you understand that, I don't mind with the younger lads, helping them along the way. And he sat me in the office and he said, Danny, I'm going to be really honest with you. He said, I'm going to speak to you like I'm a player. And I was like, straight away, no, you don't, that's not what you want to do. I think there was part of him that came in and thought that the senior professionals that were at the club that had played in the Premier League weren't going to respect him. It couldn't have been further from the truth. I respected him for what he'd done in his career, for being an unbelievable centre-back, for playing as long as he did, for then going to Rangers and doing what he did. And I respected him more than he could ever imagine. But I think that he probably thought that I looked at him and thought, I'm not having someone that's, a few years older than me telling me this and whatever. When that couldn't have been further from the truth. I respected him unbelievably, not because he was my manager, but because of what he'd done as a player. And that automatically gains respect. So he wanted to go, down the route with not all younger players, but quite a few younger players and just a few senior players. And I said to him, and he was like, I don't really see you playing. So I was like, fine, I'm prepared to move on. He said, I'm not going to be a moment's hassle whatsoever. You're new to the job. Anything you need from me in the meantime, just tell me. And then there was like a few instances where, where you go about it the right way. You always find at times that managers will try and do things to annoy you. But when managers do things to annoy you, it just makes you dig your feet in a little bit more, because that's human nature. But I've seen Dave since, brilliant coach. He's doing coaching now, great coach. Loved his ideas at Sheffield United, the way that he wanted to play the game. And what a lot of people don't talk about is that the centre of what he wanted to have as a successful season was Kevin McDonald, who was defensive midfielder and one of the best, if not the best in the league at the time. He left Wolves, I think, 2 days before the season began. So everything changed. So that was making it very difficult for him. And David obviously didn't last that long with the club. But my thing then, because the media side of things started to go well for me, was I was doing pre-season and we'd go 9 till, say, 4 o'clock. Pre-season days are long. And I would drive down from Sheffield to London and I'd go and do Talk Sport for 3 hours, whether it be 10 till 1 or 7 till 10. And then I would drive back, have 3 hours sleep, and then go do my next day of pre-season. And I knew that there was something wrong then. I knew that what was starting to happen for me was that football was starting to get in the way of what I was wanting to do next. And football had always been the first. It always had to take priority. And so then I decided that if I was going to leave, it would be to something that would suit me. So I went non-league. I went to Chester, which was brilliant. They trained on a Tuesday and a Thursday. That enabled me to then do the transition sort of thing where I was finding out, do I want to go down the media route or do I not want to go down the media route? And he gave me enough time to understand that. And then within 6 months, I'd retired because football, even semi-professional football, had got in the way of what I was wanting to do next. And it was a nice transition for me. And some like senior players that I've spoken to over the last couple of years, they say to me, how do you plan for finishing? And I always say, if you can, doesn't matter what level you go to, continue to play till you know what you're going to do next.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter how much money you've got in the bank. That is irrelevant. You still have to do something with your life. The amount of times you'll hear people say, oh, well, he could retire tomorrow and just sit on his backside for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
Don't want to do that. We've all unfortunately had to deal with that. Or a lot of us have had to deal with that the last 3 months with the lockdown. And you need to be doing something in your life. It's as simple as that. So that's like the advice that I give to lads that are getting towards that stage of the career.
No, that's
fantastic.
I think that brings us to an end to the podcast.
Yeah.
That was a lovely note to finish on.
Yeah, it's been lovely.
It's like it was staged.
Yeah.
So if you just look at the end of your script and then you can see.
You want me to say this bit at the end?
I'd say that.
Well, thank you so much for coming.
Oh, my pleasure.
It's been great talking with you. There's just hearing about your career and who you've trained with, who you've played with, the managers you've played under, the coaches. It's just great to hear. It's a real insight of what goes on in the football world.
Yeah,
we really appreciate it.
One of the things I'd say now is like, for me, don't get me wrong, so fortunate to play football as long as I did. And like people call me daft for it, but it didn't exist now. It's finished.
Yeah.
And like people say, oh, well, you don't ever look back and like, no, I don't, because I've always been of the opinion. And like I say, it's each to their own again. But if you're looking backwards at things, you just don't look forward. And like for me now, it's I get such a greater satisfaction if someone gets in contact with me and says, oh, you know what, I enjoyed that game that you did yesterday, the commentary, I enjoyed that column that you wrote about, rather than someone coming up to me and going, remember that goal you scored? I'm not interested in that now. It's great to have those memories, but I think it's so important to be in the moment and with what you're doing now.
It's amazing. Thank you, Dano.
You're welcome. My pleasure, gentlemen.
Subscribe, follow, all that stuff. And we'll see you in a bit. Cheers, guys.
So we're just going to finish recording now, mate.
Brilliant.
Thank you.